Is it ever really gone? Is it ever really over? Does it ever fade away? Or is it only getting closer? Does it ever really change? Will it always take me back in time to yesterday and all the love that we had? Were Ben Chapman and Ashley Monroe singing about love? Nah, they were singing about Kiké Hernandez and the Dodgers. Kiké's back, baby, and we are live on Locked On Dodgers.
You are Locked On Dodgers, your daily Los Angeles Dodgers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, Dodger fans, this is Locked On Dodgers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thanks to our everydayers for making Locked On Dodgers your first listen every weekday morning. And thanks to those of you who are with us live here on Sunday evening, February 9th. Remember, this show is free and available on all podcast platforms and on YouTube simply by searching for Locked On Dodgers. So please subscribe wherever you're watching or listening right now. If this is your first time with us, my name is Jeff Snider. My normal co-host is Vince Samperio, but that's not Vince next to me. That's my semi-frequent guest co-host, Clint Pasillas. Vince and Clint and I are all lifelong Dodger fans, just like most of you. We've also both spent time covering the Dodgers in the press box and the locker room. So we bring you the smart fans perspective on our boys in blue every weekday morning. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Download the app or head to FanDuel.com to get started. And Clint, thank you for being with me. I appreciate it. There's a lot of big stuff going on in the world of sports. And of course, I am talking entirely about the Dodgers re-signing Kiké Hernandez. That is the huge news of this Sunday. If you're watching on YouTube, you can see Clint is wearing a Philadelphia Eagles hat. Clint is an Eagles fan. I had a super bowl of cereal this evening while watching a football game. We'll talk more about the football game in the third segment. Right now, though, Clint, I know you want to gloat about your Eagles. We brought you on to talk Dodgers, baby. Your other championship team.
Yeah, I'll allow it. You know, what a time to be me. I tell you what, Dodgers win a championship. Eagles win their second in, 8 years or something like that. Last one was 17. I was drinking out of my 2017 glass. 17 with the Eagles feels good. It doesn't feel good with the Dodgers. And then Kiké Hernandez, what a heck of a day to decide to be like, hey, I'm going back to L.A. Of course, he picks about an hour before the start of the big game. So he knows how to make it dramatic, though. He's back. We all knew it would happen.
Yeah, and he took the Shohei and Roki route and kind of broke the news himself. Just before reporters started saying, sources are telling me, Kiké posted a video of himself. And he didn't specifically say, I'm back, but it was a whole lot of highlight videos of him with the Dodgers and, the Dodgers World Series run, et cetera. And then all of the reports that he is back. It's a one-year deal. We haven't heard terms yet. It's not official yet. They say it's pending physical, which I assume is just a fancy way of saying we're waiting until the 60-day IL opens up so that we have a roster spot.
Yep.
So yeah, that physical will take a day or two. It's kind of interesting. I am not totally sure. Like, I know the 60-day IL opens up when spring training starts.
Yeah.
Pitchers and catchers report on Monday. Pitchers and catchers have their first workout on Tuesday. I assume it's one of those days that spring training officially starts, so the 60-day IL opens up. I can't find the actual date anywhere. So.
Yeah, I was given two different dates. I was initially told the 11th is when the IL opens. I was also told the 9th is when the IL opens. I don't think that's the date, but either way, I guess it kind of doesn't matter. We're at a point where it's just crossing the T's, dotting the I's, and putting a few dudes, whether that's Gavin Stone, most likely hitting the 60-day IL first, then Kiké gets a roster spot, and shortly thereafter will be Clayton Kershaw hitting that IL, and then he could immediately hit the 60-day IL, rejoining the team, and then hit that IL, and we'll have a few roster spots to play with. But again, Kiké Hernandez, man, I know we're going to talk a whole bunch about this. There was a little bit of doubt. I think it started creeping in, and the longer the offseason went, it just felt like maybe there's a chance they couldn't figure it out, or more so, depending on what side of the bed you woke up on. It felt like also it could have been like, yeah, there's something kind of just resting there. They have a gentleman's agreement, and there's no reason to talk about it. We did not hear rumors about him going to very many other teams. It was the Dodgers, a little bit of the Yankees again creeping up late in the offseason, but it was never not going to be the Dodgers. The fit is just the vibes, and the clubhouse fit is perfect. The roster, my God, is that a very different question or conversation?
I never had any doubt that Kiké would be back. I was sure of it, and I was sure that it would be as soon as spring training started. Like you said, I don't know when they agreed to this, but yeah, a player of Kiké's caliber, Kiké's resume, to have no rumblings all offseason. And the only thing for Kiké to have openly saying, yeah, I want to go back to the Dodgers, and the Dodgers openly saying, yeah, we want Kiké back. It's like, it was just a no-brainer, even though, speaking of no-brainer, one person in the comments, every time we mentioned Kiké, we made sure to call me an idiot and point out there was no room for him on the roster. And, I'm like, you know what? There's always room for somebody. And what I said a week or two ago, last time we talked about this, was that I expect them to sign Kiké, even with Chris Taylor still on the roster, because as spring training goes on, injuries happen, whether it's the Dodgers or on another team. And that is where a spot for Chris Taylor will open up. Either another team suddenly has a need for a guy like Chris Taylor who can play all over the field, who has, if you're buying low on him, you can hope for a rebound of the bat, or it could be an injury on the Dodgers. And that, and that's the spot, but somewhere one of the 30 teams is going to have an injury that makes room for Chris Taylor. Yeah, and so either the Dodgers will trade him to that team, or it'll be the Dodgers, and they will open the season with Kiké and Chris Taylor both on the roster.
Yeah, I mean, also at the same time, like Andy Pages is not guaranteed a roster spot. This is something that my my unofficial official co-host Kevin and I talked about on my channel this week. If you're looking at some dudes who maybe are kind of fighting for a roster spot, or if they play well or play poorly this spring, that could affect the outlook of the 40-man roster, and more so the 26-man roster for opening day and domestic opening day, all that. Andy Pages is absolutely not a lock for the opening day roster, just because he's young. He's limited kind of just to the outfield, where, of course, if he's playing right field, they have Teoscar there, cemented. He's not a phenomenal center fielder, as where Kiké Hernandez can play second base, can play short, can play third, can play center field. And again, also, it's about the vibes. That's a big thing for him. So even if they have to option Andy Pages for a little bit, they can find a way to make this roster work. Or even Hae-Sung Kim is another one of those guys in that same boat, and somebody we talked about, where if he has a bad spring training, that was a big kind of hullabaloo when you were talking about the signing of Kim, was that, they allowed him to be optioned to AAA, which really benefits the Dodgers. And in this scenario, could benefit Kiké Hernandez in a lot of ways. So Dodgers have a butt ton of talent, and it's going to be very, very interesting to see how they sort it all out, because as long as I've been watching this team and more so covering this team, we haven't seen this much talent occupy a 40-man roster.
Yeah, absolutely. And the depth is interesting, because right now you do have Austin Barnes and Chris Taylor, guys who you're like, okay, are they going to do anything when they do come off the bench? But the starting nine, whoever that ends up being, a ton of potential there. And like you said, spring training is actually going to be a battle for some of these guys. Yeah. Obviously, if Freddie Freeman is healthy to start the season, he will be on the roster. He's not fighting for a spot. Mookie Betts isn't fighting for a spot. Hae-Sung Kim, James Outman, Andy Pages, those guys are fighting for spots. Dalton Rushing is fighting for a spot, he trying to force that issue. Chris Taylor, fighting for a spot either, on the Dodgers or somewhere. It'll be interesting to see, but it's kind of fun to have this kind of battle go on in spring training, because even though we know, like you said, we know the core of this team and how good it is, these fringe battles are going to be really interesting to watch. And that means we are going to see these guys get a lot of at-bats to see what they can do.
Yeah. And I mean, it's another shortened spring training. Either way, however it shakes out, they're going to be really difficult conversations ahead for this front office, for Dave Roberts, because I mean, imagine how tough that would be for somebody like Dave to have that chat with Chris Taylor. Of course, they just signed Kiké Hernandez. He doesn't necessarily have to worry about a roster spot, but if there's somebody, I think even you and I have talked about it here on Locked On this offseason, if there's kind of one dude that was very clearly blocking Kiké Hernandez, it's Chris Taylor, and he's got to feel that big target on his back entering spring training. But at the same time, we also know he's a very, very good player, and if Kim ends up being the odd man out or Andy Pajes for a little bit, I think all of us as fans are not going to be like, oh no, this is the terrible decision. Like there's not really a bad or a wrong decision for this team to make right now. You have a lot of talent, let it sort itself out. And we'll let the play speak for itself, especially in the first, few weeks of spring training. But I do not envy the position Dave Roberts is in, even in the slightest.
Yeah, and maybe this motivates Chris Taylor, and he comes out and has an awesome spring and regains his form. One decision that Dave Roberts will have to make got a little bit easier in a really quiet way that kind of snuck under the radar. We're going to dig into the changes to the Shohei Ohtani rule when we come back. So thanks for making us your first listen, and please keep it locked on Dodgers. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel. When the game tips off, the NBA action is just getting started, and there's no better place to get in on it than FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. With FanDuel, you can place live bets throughout the game, so even if you miss the opening tip-off or want to bet on a fourth quarter comeback, you can stay in the action. And if you're looking for a bigger payout, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay. And if you place a $5 bet and you win it, you'll get $150 in bonus bets. So you might be looking for a lock, an easy bet to put that $5 on so that you can get your $150 in bonus bets. I'm looking at the NBA schedule. Monday night, the Pelicans are playing the Thunder. The Thunder are minus 1,500 favorites. That is the biggest favorite, the biggest mismatch you're going to find in the next few days in the NBA. So if you believe that, you think Thunder over the Pelicans, take that one, put your $5 on it. You're not going to win much with that $5, but you will get your $150 in bonus bets, because right now new FanDuel customers can get $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. That's FanDuel.com for your shot at $150 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Hey, we are back. Thanks for making Locked On Dodgers your first listen every weekday morning. Thanks for being here live with us. Thanks for being an everydayer. If you're not an everydayer, it's easy to become one. Just watch or listen every weekday morning. Also, for your second listen, be sure to check out Locked On MLB, hosted by our buddy Paul Francis Sullivan, a.k.a. Sully. Also, check out Locked On Sports Today and Locked On Sports Los Angeles over on YouTube. And, of course, with Clint here with me, I must mention, check out All Dodgers with Clint Pasillas and Dodger Territory. Especially check out Dodger Territory on Monday at what time? Noon?
We are going noon o'clock Pacific. The man who makes the decisions, president of baseball operations, Andrew Friedman, will be joining myself and Alana Rizzo, and you could bet your bottom dollar we'll be asking about how long this Kiké deal has been in the works.
And he will not give you an answer, but
damn straight.
I respect you asking. So let's jump back in. I mentioned go to the break. Interesting change. We've talked several times here about Shohei Ohtani being a two-way player, how the Dodgers are more suited than any other team to run a six-man rotation, because one of their starters, Shohei Ohtani, doesn't count as a pitcher because he is a two-way player. So they can have 13 pitchers plus Shohei Ohtani. The caveat was that because Ohtani did not pitch at all in 2024, he was going to have to requalify as a two-way player, because the rules on two-way players, you have to pitch at least 20 major league innings and play at least 20 major league games as a position player or designated hitter with at least 3 plate appearances in each of those games. And you had to meet those conditions either in the current season or the previous season. And so because Ohtani did not meet those conditions in 2024, he was going to have to meet them in 2025 before he qualified as a two-way player, which meant for the first 3 or 4 weeks that Ohtani was pitching, he was going to have to be on the roster as a pitcher, using up one of those 13 spots. Well, sometime in the last week and a half, Major League Baseball quietly made a change to that rule. And this was brought to my attention by one of our everydayers, one of our Locked On Dodgers insiders, Joe Holt, Great dude. I've met Joe at a couple Dodger games. He is one of my favorites. He lives back in like Tennessee now, so he doesn't get to get many Dodger games anymore. But Joe is one of the best Dodger fans you will meet. And Joe texted me the other morning and said, "Did you know that the rule is actually you have to qualify in either the current season or either of the two previous seasons?" And I said, "I did not know that." And I looked, and sure enough, it says players qualify for two-way player designation if they have met both of the following conditions in either the current MLB season or any of the two previous seasons. And then it lists those conditions. So I went to the Wayback Machine, archive.org, where you can actually look up older versions of a web page. And I punched in the URL, mlb.com/glossary/rules/two-way players. And I looked at previous versions of this page as recently as January 29th, which was now, 10 days ago now? It still said in the previous season. So sometime in the last week and a half, they changed this webpage to say the previous season or the current season or the previous two seasons. There was no announcement. Maybe an announcement is coming. Maybe somebody, the webmaster, as we used to call them back in Web 1.0 days, accidentally published a page too soon. This is like kind of a big deal, Clint, because this means that as soon as Ohtani, that he will never count towards the pitcher limit. He'll be a hitter, and then once he's ready to start pitching, he'll just be on the roster as a two-way player from day one, and he can start pitching whenever without ever counting as a pitcher on the roster.
Yeah, absolutely a huge deal for the Dodgers. Once again, MLB bending the knee to the mighty Dodgers, doing whatever they command of them. I am interested in hearing if there is some sort of explanation of this rule change at some point. I know Manfred and MLB are speaking to reporters in Florida. I think it's on the 11th of February. No. It's the 17th of February or something like that. And then they're going to the Cactus League in Arizona and speaking to reporters the next day. I'm hoping somebody asked that question. I won't be out there, but I'm very curious how that came about, who decided to kind of make that quick little sly edit. But a huge benefit for the Dodgers where, might have taken Shohei as he's building up, because this was something I brought up on my channel last week. The whole idea of Shohei having to kind of build up his pitching while still hitting and being the DH, like if he's not on the roster as a pitcher during opening day or at opening day or domestic opening day or whatever, how does that work? How do rehab starts? How does him building up to 4 innings and, like 65 pitches and all that kind of stuff work? So if you have that, it's going to take you longer to get to that 20 innings if you're only pitching 1 or 2 innings at the big league level as rehab starts, or however all of that works. And I'm sure the Dodgers, who are much smarter than I, have that sorted out. But to still have this little kind of, I guess, rule bugaboo out of the way, that's massive for the Dodgers, where they're able to carry more of these pitchers, because there's also, if we're talking about the position player side and where does Kiké fit in, how does he get playing time, how does everybody else fit on the roster at the same time, having that extra pitcher is going to go such a long way for this team.
I would be interested, if I happen to know anybody who's talking to Andrew Friedman tomorrow, to know when the Dodgers found out about this, because
Shohei rule.
And say my friend Jeff Snider and his friend Joe Holt just discovered this change to the Shohei rule.
No, it's all me. I'm taking all of the credit for this.
That sounds about right.
I was perusing MLB.com stats.
So somebody tweeted about this. I don't remember who, but because I wonder if the Dodgers were aware that this change was coming, in their pursuit of Roki Sasaki as part, because obviously the Dodgers are Shohei was eventually going to be a two-way player. It really, it affects those 3 or 4 weeks. He would have been have to be on the roster as a pitcher, but those are important times. So it is kind of a weight off their shoulder. This rule only exists. The two-way player only exists because of Shohei Ohtani. It's why we call it in shorthand the Shohei Ohtani rule. So it does make sense. It's only existed for a few years, and this is the first time that Shohei has missed a season of pitching since the rule existed. So it makes sense that they would, we didn't think about this. It doesn't really make sense to make him requalify just because he got injured, because most pitcher injuries do keep you out a year, a big injury. Tommy John surgery is not super rare.
Yeah, the change isn't like, of course, everybody that's not a Dodger fan is going to say, oh, once they find out about it, because we know people aren't the brightest on the internet. Once they find out about it, they're going to say MLB's cheating. They're coddling the Dodgers and all that. But yeah, it makes a lot of sense where if there are at some point going to be more two-way players other than Shohei, which in this climate feels very difficult to see. But yeah, it seems like it does a great disservice to the player to have them be, kind of screwed over because they were also injured and miss a season where something like a Tommy John takes at least the, 12 to 16 months to return from. So it's a smart change to the rule. Will the rest of the league, will the rest of non-Dodgers MLB fans see it that way? Absolutely not. But, as Kendrick Lamar said, who cares? They not like us.
Kendrick, the name sounds familiar. Can't place
it.
So we've covered some of the decisions Dave Roberts has to make. We got one more coming up. Dave Roberts was going to have to decide who closes games for him out of the bullpen, and he had some interesting comments on Sunday that suggest the direction he is pointing in that. So we will come back a second, dig into that. So please keep it locked on Dodgers. Hey, look, we're back. That was quick. Thank you for making Locked On Dodger your first listen. Thanks again to my buddy Clint Pasillas for being here with me. Clint Pasillas of All Dodgers with Clint Pasillas and Dodger Territory with Clint and Alana. Be sure to check out both of those. Be sure to go beyond the podcast and become a Locked On Dodgers insider by going to joinsubtext.com/Locked On Dodgers. Text directly with us. Have one-on-one conversations. Get our thoughts before the podcast, and there's a Locked On Dodgers Insiders Discord you will get access to. So check that out. Dave Roberts was on MLB Network Radio on Sunday
with our favorite
Jim Bowden. You know what? We won't judge Dave Roberts too harshly for that. Interesting. I'm looking at the lineup. There was also Carlos Mendoza, the Mets manager, who I love. I love Carlos Mendoza. Do you like? I don't know if you had the same feelings as me during the NLCS, Clint. Like every time I heard Carlos Mendoza talk, I love that dude.
I only love Joe Davis at this point.
Okay, I respect that. They also had AJ Hinch. I don't have as fond of feelings towards him, and Clint Hurdle, who had a purple face. That's all I remember about him. But
for full transparency, I wasn't paying attention, so I said Joe Davis, and then I realized you're talking about the manager. So yep. I stand behind my Joe Davis thing, but I was writing more notes for my Friedman interview tomorrow.
You're not here for your paying attention ability. You are here for your good looks and your Dodger takes and your math.
Yeah.
But Dave Roberts talked with Jim Bowden, and Jim Bowden tweeted this. He said, Dave Roberts, Dodgers manager, just told us that Tanner Scott will get the brunt of the saves to start the season. I'm not sure that brunt is the noun he was looking for. I'm not sure if that was a direct quote or not, but what he's saying, I think they meant the bulk. But either way, you and I have talked about this on this show, Clint, about because I think you and I did a show after the press conference introducing Tanner Scott, in which Brandon Gomes said that Tanner Scott's going to get plenty of opportunities to close games, something like that,
Exactly.
This one is a little bit more defined that, you still, whether it's Brunt or Bulk, it's still not saying Tanner Scott is the closer, but it does seem like Tanner Scott will get, if there's a save opportunity and Tanner Scott is available that game, he's probably going to get the save opportunity. And, people who know me know I am a fan of the closer by committee. I am a fan of playing the matchups. I'm a fan of all that. I'm also, though, a fan of having 7 high leverage guys in your bullpen. So you want to name Tanner Scott the closer? Great. And guess what? When they're about to win their 3rd straight game, and Tanner Scott got to save the last 2 days. So Tanner Scott's not available. Guess what? You got a bunch of other options too. Guys who have closed games, whether it's Kirby Yates or Evan Phillips or Blake Trinan or Alex Vesia or whoever else, Michael Kopech. They've got so many guys. Anthony Bonda's on that list too. I think I just named the 7, right? Like all those guys, any one of those guys could close for you. And like
Kirby
6 of them
Yates,
have.
another one of those guys. There's so much talent in that bullpen. And listen, both of us, not massive Jim Bowden fans, did not listen to the MLB Network podcast. Reading, just kind of sensing tea leaves around me and using my doc translator in my brain. My imagination says he said something to the effect of getting the lion's share of save opportunities.
You speak Dave?
I speak Dave. I have some pretty good Dave tongue phrasing. Just kind of laying in weight in my brain. Yeah, and Dave isn't going to say, "Oh no, he's our defined closer," because, like you said, you mentioned all those names. They have Michael Kopech, Evan Phillips, who saved games for this team for the last couple of years. Alex Vesia. They have a bevy of options they can have. Go and lock down the ninth inning, and you also can use any of those guys like we saw in the postseason to get yourself out of a big jam in the seventh or the third inning or whatever. So to get somebody like Scott, where if the stars align and it makes more sense for him to pick up more of the ninth innings, because hey, they did sign him to a pretty lucrative, pretty long-ish term deal, and he's somebody who values trying to be a closer in his career. Cool, you can tell him, you can promise him that. Tell him, yeah, you can get as many saves as you can or as you want, as many opportunities that align. But if it makes more sense for you to pick up big innings or big outs in the eighth, you're probably going to get that. So I like what Dave said.
Yeah, the other thing to consider is I do believe that Tanner Scott is probably the best pitcher of that bunch. And there's a lot of really good pitchers, but as far as getting lefties and righties out, all those things, best stuff. I think Tanner Scott is your best guy there. Yeah. And so, whether that remains for the whole season, because he's our best guy, he's going to get the save opportunities. That's why I'm not a big fan of the designated closer, because if you've got Fernando Tatis and Manny Machado and Xander Bogaerts coming up in the eighth inning, I'd rather have your best guy going that inning,
Yeah.
But when you've got, okay, we'll go with Blake Trinan in the eighth. We'll go with Kirby Yates in the eighth. We'll go with Michael Kopech in the eighth. Evan Phillips, Alex Vesia. You've got so many arms that, okay. Yeah. If Tanner Scott wants to do his stuff in the ninth inning, great. I do though. And Tanner Scott said it at the press conference. Brandon Gomes reiterated that Tanner Scott's opinion is he wants to win, and he wants to do whatever is best for the team. And so right now, I think it makes sense, I guess, to go into spring training with the idea that, for the most part, Tanner Scott's our closer. And
that's fine.
Yeah. And it's a very, you've got these guys signing. Kirby Yates signed with the Dodgers knowing that they already signed Tanner Scott, and they already re-signed Blake Trinan, and they still had Evan Phillips and Michael Kopech. Like, Kirby Yates didn't sign expecting to be the closer. I think he wants to win a World Series. I think Evan Phillips wants to win another World Series. Blake Trinan wants to win another World Series. And Tanner Scott wants to win a World Series. And so, I am positive that all those guys would love to fill whatever role will best help the Dodgers do that. And so, you know what? For right now, if he's a closer, that's awesome. I'm excited to watch him pitch in Dodger Bay.
Yeah, I love what our friend Richard Flores is saying in the chat here. The back end of the bullpen is stacked. It doesn't matter who slams the door. It's about who picks up that final out in the World Series. And they have – we would not be shocked. This isn't a team that it's definitely not going to be Walker Buehler in 2025 if they go and try to save a World Series.
Hey, trade deadline, baby.
Yeah, all right. We'll say it's highly unlikely it's a Walker Buehler. But now, with adding these extra two names, particularly Scott and Yates, you find yourself in less of that position, or at least less of a chance of that being in that position where you need to rely on your guy who just started 2 days before going in and doing some old school Dodger baseball and closing that game, days after starting. So, kudos to a guy I'm talking to tomorrow, Andrew Friedman, and this front office for this insane offseason, capped off with Kiké Hernandez re-sign. We're probably a few hours to a day or two away from the return of Clayton Kershaw as well. It's I've said it so many times in the last couple of months. It's a really, really fun time to be a Dodger fan, and a fun time for people like us who get the pleasure of covering this team on a daily basis.
Absolutely. Quick hits, a couple things. Our buddy Kevin Uhas He asked the question, out of all of our starting pitchers, who's going to be on the IL first, and how long is the IL stint? Quick, rapid fire, Clint.
Glasnow, 3 weeks.
All right. I will go with, I'm going to go with Dustin May. With it's just going to be
that's fair.
General soreness.
Yeah.
So, for
general soreness.
4 weeks. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then last thing, the big game in the NFL. Isn't it such like? Have you ever seen a more MLB move than the NFL not allowing people to say the name of their biggest game of the season? Isn't that such a game? That's like such a Rob Manfred move. Like, what are you trying to do? Enjoy our sport?
Yeah, it's pretty weak. But I'm seeing one of the commenters in the chat here, Asia Robertson, pointing out a few times, confused about my Eagles hat. Yes, I am one of the very rare Dodgers and Eagles fan. I'm also a Lakers fan, and today was fun. I could imagine for other people it was a very, very boring, superb owl because it was all very one-sided. But for me and my Eagles and my MVP quarterback, Jalen Hurts, it was a very fun game, and two-time Super Bowl champs. It's also it's just a good time to be me, is what I'm saying. Dodgers, absolutely. Eagles, Kiké today.
I'm also I know our buddy Dave at Doyers Dave on Twitter, co-host of the Benches Cleared podcast. He is also an Eagles fan and Dodgers fan and Lakers fan. So same fandom as you. So happy for Dave. Congratulations to him. Those are the Eagles fans. Oh, Mike Trout. Congratulations to Mike Trout. ELGSES Eagles. And I was not the target market for this halftime show. Before tonight, I had heard one Kendrick Lamar song, and that was because the Dodgers did a hype video to that song.
Mm-hmm.
I'll tell you what, I loved the halftime show to the point where I am going to choose to listen to some K-Dot. I was a big fan of him, but I have to ask, Kendrick Lamar, that's his first and middle name. His last name is Duckworth. Do you think Kendrick Lamar would seem less cool if he went by Kendrick Duckworth?
Yes, 1,000%.
Part B of this question, how come Kendrick Lamar, when he go by his first and middle name, he sounds awesome? My name's Kendrick Lamar. When I do, I sound like my mom's mad at me. Jeffrey J., you get inside right now. Like, what's the deal with that?
I can get away with it. I'm Clint James. That sounds smooth, right?
Yeah, I don't know. 2 one-syllable names is weird. Clint James. Like,
I don't know. I didn't get yelled at by my mom a whole lot. She wasn't around.
I mentioned this to my son, and my son's response was, well, Dad, I think if you were as cool as Kendrick Lamar, Jeffrey J. would be a cool sounding name. Like,
that's true.
You know, so
I mean, I could see like
I'm not cool, and I appreciate my teenage son for pointing that out.
I could see you spinning some vinyl for like like Will Smith back in the day or something like that. A fill in for Jazzy Jeff.
It just everybody named Jeff used to be a DJ for Will Smith.
Yeah, exactly.
Right,
I'm saying you would have been cool in the 90s, and I'm sure your wife tells you that often.
Yeah, I was cool in the 90s. Not just would have been. I was super cool in the 90s. I think that does it for us. You got anything else for tonight, Clint?
No, sir. I appreciate you giving me this platform because I didn't feel like doing a whole stream myself tonight. Probably will not be live tomorrow night on my own channel because it is Luka Doncic's first game. I always mess up the last name. Another one that's tough there. But Luka's first game as a Laker, so I don't want to compete with the Lake Show, the revitalized Lake Show. So if you want to see me tomorrow, 2 mid, Alana Rizzo is back, and we're going to have a good time talking to the man, the myth, the legend, the guy they need to build a statue for, Andrew Friedman of the Los Angeles Dodgers. So
be sure to check that out. Follow Clint in all his places. Thank you all for making us your first listen or your last listen. If you're here live with us tonight, we appreciate that. Be sure to subscribe wherever you're watching or listening right now. Also, be sure to check out Locked On Sports Today and Locked On Sports Los Angeles, the 2 24/7 streaming channels on YouTube from the Locked On Podcast Network. You can also go beyond the podcast and become a Locked On Dodgers insider by going to joinsubtext.com/Locked On Dodgers. You can follow us on Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok at Locked On Dodgers. Clint is on Twitter at RealFRG. Vince is on Twitter at VinceSense91. I'm on Twitter at Snydog. All of our DMs are open over there. You can also email us, lockedondodgers@gmail.com, or send us a voicemail or a text message to 323-863-LOCK5625. We are here every weekday morning. We hope you'll be here with us. When you get in your car or sit on your couch, tell your smart device to play podcast Locked On Dodgers. And remember, you don't have to agree. You just have to listen. We will talk to you tomorrow.
Bye.